Hi, my name is Gary Bunn and I'm the CDL coordinator here with Nash Community College. Today we're going to be performing a Class A no tractor trailer pre-trip inspection that you should be able to perform when you are testing for your CDL license. By using this inspection as a study guide, it should assist you in passing the pre-trip portion for your CDL license. We're going to start the inspection at the front of the vehicle. The first thing we're going to check for is the posture of the vehicle. Make sure it's sitting level, it is not leaning to one side or other. If so, that could indicate a flat tire, suspension problem system, or improperly loaded cargo. We're going to start at the top of the vehicle with the clearance lights, making sure our clearance lights are properly mounted and secure, clean, amber in color. Our windshield has no cracks, chips, and no illegal stickers. Moving down, we're going to check our turn signal assemblies on both sides, making sure that each are properly mounted and secure, clean, amber in color. We're now going to check our headlight and headlight assemblies, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure and clean. And last, we're going to check underneath the engine compartment to make sure we have no leaks or fluid coming from the engine compartment. At this time, we're going to start on the right side of the engine compartment. We're going to start with all of our hoses, including air intake hoses and radiator hoses, making sure that they're all properly mounted and secure and have no leaks. We're going to check our coolant reservoir to make sure our coolant reservoir is properly mounted and secure with no leaks and filled to the adequate level. Under here, we're going to check our alternator, making sure our alternator is properly mounted and secure, the electrical connections are tight, and our alternator is belt driven. And we would check the condition of the belt to make sure that the belt is not worn, frayed, and has no more than 3/4 inches of free play. We would also check our water pump, which is located down here under the alternator, making sure that our water pump is properly mounted and secure, has no leaks, and our water pump is also belt driven, so we would check the condition of the belt in the same order as we did the alternator belt. Moving back, we're going to check our exhaust system running from our turbo all the way back to our muffler. We're going to make sure that our exhaust system is properly mounted and secure, has no leaks, and we would check it all the way to the rear of the muffler, making sure at no place does the exhaust system come in contact with the fuel system. As we move back here, we're going to also check our muffler to making sure it is properly mounted and secure, and it also has no leaks. While we're here, we're going to go ahead and check our drive shaft and universal joints, making sure our drive shaft and universal joints are properly mounted and secure, and our universal joints are properly lubricated. We're going to go ahead and check our catwalk and our steps leading to our catwalk, making sure both are properly mounted and secure, free of any debris that could cause us to trip or fall, and our steps will support the weight of the driver. On the left side of the engine compartment, once again, we're going to start with all of our hoses, our air intake hoses, our radiator hoses, and our air lines. We're making sure that they're all properly mounted and secure. There are no leaks. From there, we're going to go to our air compressor. We're going to check our air compressor, making sure that our air compressor is properly mounted and secure, has no leaks, and it is gear driven. We're now going to move to our steering. We're going to check our power steering fluid reservoir, making sure our reservoir is properly mounted and secure, no leaks, and filled to the adequate level. All of our power steering hoses, making sure they're properly mounted and secure and they have no leaks. We're going to be checking our power steering pump to make sure that our power steering pump is properly mounted and secure with no leaks, and it is also gear driven. Last thing on the engine compartment we're going to check is our oil. We would pull our oil dipstick out, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it out, and check the oil level to make sure that the oil level is at the proper level. At this time, we're now going to move to our steering system. We're going to start with our steering shaft and universal joints, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure. Universal joints are properly lubricated. We're now going to go to our gearbox and gearbox hoses, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure, and there are no leaks anywhere along the gearbox or the hoses. We're now going to move to our pitman arm, our drag link, our steering knuckle, steering arm, and our tie-in rod, making sure that they're all properly mounted and secure, no movement along any joints, and making sure that the castle nut and cotter pins are in place. At this time, we're now going to move to our front suspension. We're going to start off by inspecting our front spring hanger and our rear spring hanger, making sure that both are properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. From there, we're going to move to our leaf springs. We're going to check our leaf springs to make sure that they are not cracked, shifted, or broken. We then will move to our U-bolts and nuts, making sure that they are both tight and looking for any signs that the springs have been shifted. From there, we're moving to our shock absorber and our shock absorber mounts. We're going to make sure that they are properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts. Also, there are no leaks along the shock absorber. While we're right here, we're going to go ahead and check our frame along our engine compartment to make sure that the frame has no cracks or illegal welds. At this time, we're going to move to the brake system. We're going to start with our brake hose, making sure that our brake hose is properly mounted and secure with no leaks. Our brake chamber, which is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts and also no leaks. Our push rod and slack adjuster are both properly mounted and secure, and with the brakes released, we should have no more than 1 inch of free movement. We will now move to the inside of the wheel, checking our brake shoes and brake drums. Our brake shoes must not be worn dangerously thin. Our brake drums are not to contain any cracks, any welds, or any foreign grease or oil. At this time, we're going to move to our front steer tire. We're going to start with the tread area. First off, we want to make sure that the tread area is worn evenly smooth and it has a minimum of 4/32 of tread depth remaining. We would check the inside and outside outer walls of our tire. We're going to make sure that there are no abrasions, bulges, or cuts anywhere along the sidewalls. We would move to our valve stem, checking our valve stem and using an air pressure gauge to check the pressure of the tire to make sure it's in the manufacturer's specified range. We would also check our valve stem to make sure it's properly mounted and secure. It's secured with a cap and no leaks. We would now move to our rim area. We're going to check the inside and outside of the rim to make sure it contains no cracks or no welds. We would check all of our lug nuts for tightness, make sure that they're properly mounted and secure, tight, and that there would be no rust streaks or shiny threads to indicate a loose lug nut. We would then move to our oil hub, checking our oil tub to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, all the bolts are tight, no leaks, and it is filled to the adequate level. Before moving down along the side of the vehicle, I want to check my reflector here, making sure that my side reflector is properly mounted and secure, amber in color. We're now going to move to the door area. The first thing we're going to check is our door mirror, making sure that our door mirror is properly mounted and secure. The mirror contains no cracks and it is clean. We're going to start with the door itself, first checking my door handle to make sure it will properly open the door. Upon opening the door, we're going to check the door hinges, making sure that the door hinges will actually support the weight of the door. On the inside of the door, we're going to be checking our door seal to make sure that the door seal completely goes around the entire door, and we will make sure that our window is operable by rolling it up and down. While I'm standing right here with the door open, we're going to start by checking our 3 pieces of emergency equipment. Here is I have spare fuses. Behind the seat, I have my 3 reflective triangles, and behind the back of the cab, I have my fire extinguisher, and my fire extinguisher is properly mounted and secured, fully charged, and fully rated, properly rated, I'm sorry. We're going to now move to the fuel tank area. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to check under the bottom of the fuel tanks to make sure that there are no leaks. We're next going to move to the fuel tank straps to make sure that they're tight, that we see no shiny marks indicating movement of the fuel tank. And we would then remove our fuel cap from the vehicle and check the inside of the fuel cap to make sure we have a chain and a rubber seal to prevent leaking. All right, at this time we're moving to the side of the vehicle. We want to check the side of the vehicle to make sure that we see no visible damage. We want to make sure our DOT reflective tape covers at least 50% along the entire side of the vehicle. We're going to check all the components on this one axle right here, as we did on the front. We're going to check our suspension system, we're going to be checking our brakes, and we're going to be checking our tires and rims. Starting with the suspension system, as in the front, we have a front and rear leaf spring hanger, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. Once again, we check all of our leaf springs to make sure that they are not broken, cracked, or shifted. We would check the U-bolts and nuts that hold the springs to the axle, making sure that the bolts are tight and there is no movement. From there, we would move to our braking system. Our braking system is exactly like on the front of the vehicle. We would start with our brake hose, making sure it's properly mounted and secure. Our brake chamber properly mounted and secure, and neither the hose or the brake chamber contain any air leaks. From there, we would move to our push rod and slack adjuster, making sure both are properly mounted and secure, and there would be no more than 1 inch of free play when the brakes are released, and on the inside of the wheel, our brake shoes and brake drums. The brake shoes must not be worn dangerously thin. The brake drums must contain no cracks, no illegal welds, or no grease or oil. From there, we're going to move to our dual tires. And the reason we refer to them as dual tires is because we must check in between the tires to make sure that the tires are not touching, it has adequate spacing, and there is no debris lodged in between the tires. From there, we're going to move to our tread area on our dual tires. We're going to make sure we have even wear and have a minimum of 2/32 on the rear wheels. Once again, we're going to be checking the inner and outer walls of both tires to make sure that we have no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and we would check our air pressure with a pressure gauge to make sure it's in the manufacturer specified range. We would then move to our rim. Once again, checking our valve stem, making sure it's properly mounted and secure, no leaks, and equipped with a cap. Our rims itself, making sure that there are no cracks or illegal welds anywhere along the rim. Our lug nuts, once again, to make sure that they're tight. All of them are tight, no rust streaks or shiny thread that would indicate a loose lug nut. And back here we have an axle seal, and we will be checking our axle seal to make sure everything's properly mounted and secure. All bolts and nuts are tight, no leaks. As we move on down the vehicle, our mud flap, making sure that our mud flap is properly mounted and secure and does not touch the ground. Also on the side of the vehicle, we have 2 reflectors, a side reflector at the front, a side reflector at the rear. We want to make sure both of those are properly mounted and secure and clean. As we move along, our DOT reflective tape, properly mounted and secure and clean. Our marker light, making sure it's properly mounted and secure and clean. We're going to start by making sure all of our lights are in place. As later on, we're going to do an operational check, but now we just want to make sure they're here. We're going to start with our marker lights, making sure that our marker lights are properly mounted and secure and clean. Here we have our tail lights, brake lights, turn signal, 4-way flasher assembly on both sides, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure and clean. Our backup lights, properly mounted and secure and clean. Our license plate light, properly mounted and secure and clean. At this time, we're going to be moving to the trailer hookup area. First off, we're going to start with our pintle hook, making sure that our pintle hook is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. Our pintle hook bolts are properly mounted and secure, none broken or missing. Our hitch release is properly mounted and secure in the lock position with the safety pin in place. Our tongue to our trailer is properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts. All the tongue bolts are properly mounted and secure, none broken or missing, all are tight. We now move to our safety equipment, starting first with our chains. We're going to ensure that our safety chains are attached to the truck and the trailer, that they are crisscrossed and they are both properly mounted and secure. We're going to check our electrical connection running from the truck to the trailer, making sure on both ends that they are properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. At this time, we're going to be moving to the entire frame of our trailer. We're going to make sure that the trailer frame is properly mounted and secure with no illegal welds. As we move down along the side of the trailer, we come to our landing gear. We're going to make sure that our landing gear is properly mounted and secure, is in the lock position, and it is fully raised. As we move on down the trailer, we have reflectors and clearance lights, making sure that they're both properly mounted and secure, amber in color, and clean. At this point, we're going to move to our trailer axle. Once again, on the trailer, we're going to be identifying all the parts as we have each axle we've come down the vehicle. We're going to do the suspension, we're going to do the brakes, we're going to be doing the tires and rim. This trailer is equipped with electrical brakes. So the first thing we're going to start with is the trailer electrical line, making sure that the electrical line is properly mounted and secure, connected to the brakes, the line is not worn or frayed. Then we would move to the inside of the trailer, checking the brake shoes and the brake drums, making sure the brake shoes are not worn dangerously thin. The brake drums contain no cracks or illegal welds, grease, or oil. As we move back to our suspension, back here. Once again, we would check the same items as we did on the rear of the tractor. Our front and rear spring hangers, properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. Our leaf springs, not cracked, shifted, or worn or broken. Our U-bolts and nuts, making sure that they're tight, there's no indication of movement along the springs. As we move out to our tires, once again, we have dual tires. So the first thing we're going to check is in between the tires to make sure that we have adequate spacing. The tires are not touching, there is no debris lodged in between the tires. We're going to check the tread area again, making sure that our tread area is evenly worn and has a minimum of 2/32 of tread depth remaining. We're going to check the inner and outer side walls of both of our dual tires to make sure we have no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. And at the valve stem, we would use a pressure gauge to make sure that we have the adequate air pressure specified by the manufacturer. Also, while we're at the valve stem, we would check the valve stem to make sure it is equipped with a cap and has no leaks. We would then move to the rim area of the trailer, making sure that the rim has no cracks or illegal welds anywhere along the rim. Our lug nuts, we would check all of our lug nuts to make sure that they're tight, there were no rust streaks or shiny thread to indicate a loose lug nut. And we will also be checking our oil hub to make sure our oil hub is properly mounted and secure with no leaks. As we move along, we're going to be checking the mud flap on our trailer, making sure that the mud flap is properly mounted and secure and is not touching the ground. As we move further back, we have a marker light, our rear corner marker, making sure it is properly mounted and secure, red and clean. As we move to the rear of the trailer, once again, we're going to do a light check on the rear of the trailer as we did on the rear of the tractor, but first off, we're going to start out with our DOT reflective material, making sure it's got 100% coverage across the rear of the trailer. All reflectors, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure, clean, red in color. Our tail lights, turn signals, four-way flashers, brake lights, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure, they're clean, and our marker lights, making sure that they are properly mounted and secure and clean. At this time, you would be expected to perform an operational outside light check of the vehicle. The examiner will assist you with doing this. You will sit in the vehicle and you will explain to the examiner which lights you're checking as you cut them on. And now we're getting ready to perform that. The first lights we're going to check to make sure that they are operating will be the clearance lights on top of the vehicle. We're now going to move down to our headlight assembly, making sure that our headlights are on and that our high beams are operable. We're going to be checking our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our four-way flashers. At this time, we'll move to the rear of the vehicle to check the lights there. As we check the rear lights of the vehicle, we're going to start and make sure that our tail lights come on, our center marker lights are on. We're then going to make sure we have the right turn signal, the left turn signal, our four-way flashers, and our brake lights. At this time, we're going to be performing the inside portion of the CDL pre-trip, the in-cab and startup portions. We're going to be starting with our seat belt, making sure that our seat belt is properly mounted and secure, will properly fasten, and will properly restrain us. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be checking both of our side mirrors on the driver's side and passenger side, making sure that they are adjusted for me, the driver. Once again, we were going to be checking the windshield and get a closer examination of the windshield to make sure that we have no cracks, it's not broken, and there are no illegal stickers within the wiper area. At this time, we're going to be performing what we call a safe start. We're going to make sure that the parking brakes are activated. We're going to make sure that the vehicle is in neutral. And we're going to check and make sure that our ABS light illuminates and goes out. And then we're going to start the vehicle. Upon starting the vehicle, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check 4 gauges along the dash to make sure they are operating properly. We're going to start with our voltmeter to make sure it is in proper operating range, our oil pressure gauge to make sure it is in proper operating range, our water temperature gauge to make sure it is also in proper operating range, and our air pressure gauge to make sure it is in proper operating range. Also on our dash, we're going to make sure our right turn signal indicator is working, our left turn signal indicator is working, our four-way flasher indicator is working, and also our high beam indicator is working. We're also going to be checking our defroster, and our heater to make sure that they are both properly working. We're going to be checking our windshield wipers and washer to make sure that they are functioning properly. And we're going to be checking our horns to make sure they are working properly. At this time, we are getting ready to perform a brake test. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the parking brakes will hold the vehicle while in the park position. We're going to start by putting the vehicle in drive and making sure that the vehicle will not move. At this time, we're going to be checking the service brake. We're going to be releasing the parking brakes, putting the vehicle in drive, and moving forward just a few feet and stopping the vehicle. At this time, we're getting ready to perform our lab test. We're going to be checking for leaks, alarms, and buttons. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the truck off until the engine stops, and then we're going to cut the key back to the accessory position. The first test we're going to perform is the leak test. We are going to be depressing our brake pedal, holding it down for 1 minute, and making sure that we lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure in the minute. Okay. The next test we're going to perform is our low air warning test. We're going to pump the brakes until our air pressure gets to about 60 pounds and our low air pressure warning light should illuminate. Our low air pressure light has come on as supposed to. The last test we're going to perform is our emergency brake button test. We're going to continue pumping the brakes, and at around 40 psi, our emergency braking system should activate. And that completes the lab test, and that completes the pre-trip inspection. As I stated at the beginning of the video, this will be the type of CDL pre-trip you will be expected to perform when it comes time for you testing for your CDL. If you will use this pre-trip video as a study guide, it should help you tremendously in passing that test. Thank you.